Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going backstage, into the world of directing for both theater and film. You gave us this excerpt all about directing, and we can't wait to dig in with you and our expert,
Yeah, it's a role that most people don't really understand.
for sure. So we'll kind of get to see what's going on behind the scenes, beyond what the audience sees. Have you ever, been so captivated by a performance that you wondered, how did they pull that off?
Hmm.
Well, today we'll uncover those secrets, and we'll explore just how much influence a director really has.
It's funny you should compare it to like pulling off a magic trick because the director is often compared to an orchestra conductor. They don't actually control every note, but they bring all the elements together, the actors and the lighting and the set design and even the rhythm of the dialogue.
I see. I see what you mean. It's all about creating like a harmonious whole out of so many moving parts. Speaking of moving parts, something that really surprised me in the excerpt was that the role of the director, as we know it today, is actually a pretty recent thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It really emerged late 19th, early 20th centuries, alongside the rise of realism in theater. As plays, became more complex and wanted to reflect real life more and more, the need for someone to manage all the intricacies of a performance just grew.
Okay, so as plays started demanding a deeper level of authenticity, on stage, someone needed to step in and make sure that all the pieces fit together.
Hmm.
It's fascinating how a shift in artistic style could lead to such a fundamental change in how theater is produced.
Exactly. The director, in a way, became the architect of this new realism, meticulously planning and rehearsing to, make sure that every detail contributed to a believable, immersive experience for the audience.
That makes a lot of sense. I'd never actually thought about it like that, about the evolution of the director's role. So now that we understand a bit about how the director kind of came to be, what qualities does someone need to embody this architect role? The excerpt mentions quite a few.
It does. It does. A director ideally kind of embodies this blend of intellectual and creative prowess, being organized, technical, people-oriented, an effective actor trainer, and, of course, artistic.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty tall order. It makes you wonder if directors need to be superhuman or something to be able to juggle all of those responsibilities.
Well, it does sound a little daunting, but remember, collaboration is key. No single director needs to be a master of everything. They build teams of talented individuals to bring their vision to life.
Okay,
So, for instance, a director might excel at visual storytelling, but collaborate really closely with a composer for the music.
that's reassuring. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? But even with a great team, the director's job still seems so demanding. The excerpt mentions everything from selecting the play and getting the rights to it, to managing budgets, to casting and then overseeing rehearsals. It's a lot.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. A director, I know, wears many hats, shifting between a meticulous manager and an inspiring artistic leader. So on one hand, they're handling logistics and budgets, but on the other hand, they're shaping the creative vision and motivating their team to bring that vision to life.
It sounds like finding that balance, being both organized and creatively inspiring, is a crucial part of a director's success.
Yeah, and one way directors bring structure to the creative process is by, utilizing French scenes during rehearsals.
French scenes. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, a French scene is a segment of the play that's marked by a character entering and then exiting. So rather than rehearsing like a whole act, they're focusing on these smaller chunks to examine all the little nuances of character interaction.
So it's about kind of breaking down the performance into manageable pieces, almost like building a mosaic, one tile at a time. I can see how that focused approach would help everyone get deeper insights into the characters and their relationship.
Exactly. It lets the director and the actors really dissect each entrance and exit and think about, how those movements contribute to the scene's energy and flow. It can be surprisingly revealing.
It makes you realize that every detail, even something as simple as an entrance or an exit, can be packed with meaning and intention.
Hmm.
It's fascinating how directors use those small moments to shape the overall impact of a performance.
And speaking of shaping the performance, let's talk about one of the most intriguing aspects of a director's work, unlocking the deeper meaning of the script with the actors. And one of the most powerful tools they use is improvisation.
Improvisation, I usually associate it with comedy, Like, whose line is it? Anyway,
Yeah.
I never thought of it as a tool for serious drama.
Yeah, while it's definitely used in comedic contexts, improvisation can be incredibly powerful for, dramatic work as well. It allows actors to delve deeper into their characters, backstories, and motivations and relationships in a more spontaneous and organic way. And it can unlock like hidden layers of meaning and bring a new depth to the performance.
That's a perspective I hadn't considered. Could you give us an example of how a director might use improvisation to explore a scene or a character in a deeper way?
Absolutely. The excerpt mentions that, the actors in a production of Simon's play spent time actually observing real-life mental asylum patients. So the director could use improvisation based on those observations to explore the characters' inner worlds and relationships and bring a real authentic depth and nuance to the performance.
Wow, that's fascinating. To think that observing those real-life situations could fuel improvised scenes and inform the character's actions and reactions. It's like building a bridge between reality and the stage.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm,
It's a reminder that even the most fantastical stories are rooted in human experience.
right.
And speaking of bridging reality and the stage, let's dive into the visual elements a director uses to, create a world on space.
Tableau. From what I understand from the excerpt, a tableau is like a frozen picture on stage. So how does a director actually construct these moments, and what purpose do they serve in the overall performance?
A tableau is really a carefully crafted visual composition. It's like a painting come to life, conveying a specific mood or emotion through the actor's poses and positioning on stage.
Okay, I'm picturing a scene with like dramatic lighting and the actors frozen in a powerful pose, and it conveys this specific emotion or moment in time.
That's a great visualization. And a key element in crafting the tableau is blocking. So blocking is the term for how actors move and are positioned on stage. And it's a lot more than just telling them where to stand. It's a choreographed dance that shapes the visual narrative of the play.
So the director is basically choreographing the actors' every move.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense. But I never realized how much thought goes into something as seemingly simple as where an actor stands.
Yeah, each movement is carefully planned, influenced by the emotional beats of the scene and the power dynamics and even the rhythm of the dialogue. And skilled directors use blocking to build what's called chordic tension.
Chordic tension, that's a new one for me. What does that mean, and how does it affect the audience's experience?
So it refers to a visual or focal pull in different directions on stage. And that creates this sense of unease and anticipation. So for instance, if two characters are arguing center stage, while another stands silently in the shadows, just kind of observing, the audience instinctively feels that pull, that tension in the space. It's like the calm before a storm.
So it's about using the space and the actors' positions to create a subliminal tension that draws the audience in.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much could be communicated without a single word being spoken. It seems that directors are always working on multiple levels to evoke emotions and guide our attention.
They are. And speaking of spatial dynamics, there's another layer we haven't touched on yet, stage types.
Wait, there are different types of stages?
Oh, yeah.
I've always just thought of a stage as, well, a stage. This deep dive is full of surprises. So what are the key differences between these stage types, and how do they influence a director's choices?
You're in for a treat. So each stage type dictates the relationship between the actors and the audience. And that creates a completely different energy and atmosphere. For instance, a proscenium stage, with its classic, picture frame setup, creates a clear separation between the performance and the audience.
Ah, like that invisible fourth wall they talk about in acting.
Exactly.
It sounds like the proscenium stage might lend itself well to plays that focus on realism, where you're meant to feel like you're peering into a separate world.
You hit the nail on the head. In fact, many of Athol Fugard's plays, which are known for their gritty realism, have been staged on proscenium stages. To great effect, it allows the director to really meticulously craft a specific visual world for the audience, almost like setting up a diorama.
That's intriguing. So how does the director's approach change then when they're working with a thrust stage where the audience is on three sides?
A thrust stage kind of breaks down that separation, making the performance much more intimate and immersive. The actors are surrounded by the audience, and the energy is palpable. It's almost like you're right there in the action with them.
That sounds incredible. But I imagine it also presents some challenges for the director.
It does.
Suddenly, sightlines become crucial.
Yeah.
How do you ensure that everyone in the audience has a good view when they're surrounding the stage like that?
That's where a director's spatial awareness becomes crucial. They need to choreograph the blocking so carefully that no part of the audience feels left out, making sure everyone can see and hear clearly.
It sounds like directing on a thrust stage requires a whole new level of planning and precision. Now I'm curious about the arena stage. Is that as intense as it sounds?
It definitely lives up to its name. So imagine a central performance space that's completely encircled by the audience.
Wow.
It's like a theatrical boxing ring with the action unfolding all around you. The energy and immediacy are unparalleled.
Wow, it must feel like you're right in the heart of the action. But like the thrust stage, wouldn't that also present unique challenges for the director
Oh, yeah.
in terms of sight lines and blocking?
Absolutely. Every movement has to be intentional and purposeful. You have to consider the 360-degree view that the audience has. The director has to become a master of spatial storytelling, ensuring that the audience feels enveloped by the performance, no matter where they're sitting.
Okay, so we've covered the proscenium and the thrust and the arena stages. The excerpt also mentioned open stages and something about found spaces. Could you elaborate on those?
Sure. So an open stage or an end stage is similar to a proscenium stage, but without the arch or frame.
Okay.
And it feels more open and less formal, allowing for creative staging and set design.
So picture a concert stage with the band set up against a backdrop open to the audience.
Precisely. It offers a lot of flexibility and a more contemporary feel. And then you have found spaces or flexible spaces, which are non-traditional performance areas. So like warehouses, parks, even abandoned buildings.
Wow, that's taking site-specific theater to a whole new level. It sounds like directing in those unconventional spaces would require a lot of improvisation and adaptability.
It definitely does. It's about embracing the unique characteristics of the space and incorporating them into the performance. And it can lead to truly innovative and immersive theater experiences.
It's amazing to think that something as mundane as a warehouse could be transformed into this captivating theatrical world. It sounds like directing is as much about problem solving and embracing limitations as it is about creative vision.
That's a great observation. It's about making the most of any given environment to bring a story to life. And speaking of bringing stories to life, let's shift our focus from the stage to the screen. How does film directing compare to directing for the stage?
Yes, let's dive into the world of film. I'm curious how the director's role changes when you bring cameras and editing into the mix. It must be a whole different ball game, right?
It definitely is. Film offers a unique set of tools and challenges for a director, and it allows for a level of control and precision you simply can't achieve in live theater.
That makes sense. You can't exactly rewind a live performance to adjust an actor's expression or the camera angle.
Exactly. A film director has the power to manipulate time and space, guiding the viewer's eye and shaping their experience through techniques like camera angles and close-ups and editing.
I'm a bit of a film buff myself, but sometimes all the technical jargon goes right over my head. Like, for example, what's the difference between a POV shot and a CU shot? And what about VO and FX? Can you break those down for us and explain how they're used to tell a story?
Absolutely. So let's take a look at some common film terms and how they're used to enhance storytelling. So POV stands for point of view, meaning the camera shows us the scene from a specific character's perspective.
So we see the world through their eyes.
Exactly.
That's a powerful way to create empathy and draw the audience into the character's experience.
Yeah, precisely. And a CU, or a close-up shot, focuses on a particular detail, like a character's face, to highlight subtle emotions or reactions. Imagine a close-up on a character's eyes during a tense moment. It can speak volumes.
I could picture that. The tension and the emotion would be palpable, even without any dialogue.
Yeah,
It's fascinating how film directors use these subtle techniques to create such impactful moments.
it's a delicate dance between visuals and storytelling. Now, VO, or voiceover, is narration spoken by a character who's not physically present in the scene. So think of a documentary where you hear a narrator providing context or background information.
Ah, I see. So it's like an extra layer of storytelling that can add depth and insight to the visual.
Exactly. And lastly, we have FX, which stands for special effects. And this encompasses a wide range of elements, from sound effects like, footsteps and explosions, to visual effects created through CGI or animation.
So basically, any element that's added in post-production to enhance the visual or auditory experience falls under FX.
Yeah,
It's incredible to think about the range of tools available to film directors to create their vision.
it's a vast and ever-evolving landscape. Now, speaking of visionaries, let's take a moment to celebrate some of the incredible South African women directors who have made significant contributions to both theater and film.
Yes, absolutely. The excerpt mentions names like Claire Stopford and Grafina Malope, Janice Honeyman, Fatima Dyke, Tamar Meskin, and Yael Farber.
Hmm.
It's inspiring to see such a diverse array of talent in the directing world.
It is truly inspiring. Each of these women brings a unique style and perspective to their work. So, for instance, Claire Stopford is known for her innovative use of physical theater, while Gacina Malope masterfully weaves storytelling and oral traditions into her performances. And they're all pushing the boundaries of what's possible on stage and screen.
It's incredible how their distinct voices and approaches enrich South African theater and film. It's a testament to the power of diverse perspectives in shaping artistic landscapes.
Absolutely. Now, before we move on, I want to touch on a fascinating concept mentioned in the excerpt: workshopping.
Workshopping,
Yeah,
okay?
it's a unique process that highlights the collaborative nature of theater.
Workshopping, it sounds like a theatrical laboratory where ideas are born and developed. Is that an accurate picture?
That's a great analogy. It's a collaborative process where the director and the actors, and sometimes even the playwright, work together to develop a play from the ground up. And it involves a lot of improvisation and brainstorming and experimentation and refining ideas.
So unlike a traditional rehearsal process where you're working with a finished script, workshopping is about creation and exploration, with everyone contributing to the final product.
Exactly. And it can be a messy and chaotic and incredibly rewarding process. In fact, Ethel Fugard's play, My Life, was developed through workshopping. The actors shared their personal stories, and Fugard wove those stories into the play's narrative.
Wow, that's an incredible example of how a collaborative process can birth such a powerful and personal piece of theater. To think that those actors' real-life experiences became the foundation for a play, it's a testament to the power of shared stories and collective creation.
It is, and it highlights a key takeaway about directing. It's about more than just telling actors where to stand and what to say.
It's about fostering an environment of creativity and collaboration, and bringing together diverse voices and perspective to create something truly special.
Exactly, and that collaborative spirit extends beyond the rehearsal room, reaching out to embrace the audience and their unique interpretations.
This has been such an insightful exploration into the world of directing. It's amazing to think about the complexity and artistry behind something that we often take for granted, these audience members.
Hmm.
Before we move on, what is one key takeaway you'd like listeners to ponder as we wrap up this part of our deep dive?
I'd like everyone to consider the immense power a director wields in shaping our experience as viewers. They are the architects of our emotional journeys. And by understanding their tools and techniques, we can deepen our appreciation for the artistry of performance.
That's a great point. It's a reminder to be more mindful of the choices a director makes and how those choices affect our understanding of the story. When we return, we'll delve even deeper into the nuances of the director's craft. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the deep dive. I'm so excited to continue our exploration of stage types and how they impact the director's choices.
Me too. It's like each stage offers a distinct playing field with its own set of rules and possibilities.
It makes you wonder how a director chooses the right stage type for a particular play. Is it purely a practical decision, or does it play into the artistic vision as well?
It's a fascinating interplay between practicality and artistry. So sometimes a particular type of stage is just readily available and the director works within those constraints. But other times, the stage type is chosen specifically to enhance the themes or atmosphere of the play.
I can see how the stage type could almost become another character in the story, shaping the audience's perception and influencing the way the actors interact with the space.
Exactly. Think of Ethel Fugard's The Island, a play about two political prisoners confined to a tiny cell. Imagine staging that play on a vast proscenium stage.
It would feel almost contradictory, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
The vastness of the stage would undermine the claustrophobia and the intimacy of the prisoner's situation.
precisely. A smaller, more intimate stage, like a thrust stage or even a found space, would heighten that sense of confinement and intensify the emotional impact.
It's like choosing the right frames for a painting, you know?
Hmm.
The wrong frame can detract from the artwork, while the right frame enhances its beauty and draws you in.
That's a brilliant analogy. Now, speaking of finding the right fit, let's revisit the proscenium arch stage. We talked earlier about how it creates that clear separation between the performance and the audience.
Right, like that invisible fourth wall. It creates a sense of voyeurism, almost like we're peering into a private world.
Exactly, and that separation allows the director to meticulously control what the audience sees, using techniques like lighting and set design to create a specific visual world. It's like directing a film within a frame.
Thinking back to those Fugard plays we discussed earlier, I can see how a proscenium stage would lend itself well to his style of realism. It's about creating a believable world that the audience can observe and contemplate.
It's interesting you mentioned Fugard because he's actually experimented with the different stage types throughout his career. His later works often moved away from realism and embraced a more abstract and symbolic approach to storytelling.
So a change in artistic style might prompt a shift in stage preference as well.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Now, what about the thrust stage? We touched on it briefly, but I'm curious to delve deeper into its unique challenges and opportunities.
A thrust stage is a fascinating hybrid. It offers a level of intimacy you don't get with a proscenium stage, but it also demands more from the director in terms of blocking and spatial awareness.
Right, because you're essentially choreographing for a three-sided audience.
Yeah.
Every movement has to be considered from multiple perspectives. It must be like a theatrical chess game.
It is, and it requires the director to think beyond traditional blocking patterns. So imagine a scene where two characters are having a tense conversation. On a proscenium stage, they might simply stand facing each other.
But on a thrust stage, the director has to consider how that positioning will play to the audience members seated on the sides. Will they be able to see the characters' faces? Will they be able to feel the emotional intensity of the scene?
Exactly. The director might have to stage the scene diagonally or incorporate more movement to ensure that all angles are covered and the energy of the scene reaches everyone.
It sounds like directing on a thrust stage requires a keen understanding of sightlines and the ability to think in three dimensions. It's like composing a sculpture rather than a painting.
That's a fantastic way to put it. Now, let's move on to the most immersive stage type of all, the arena stage.
Ah, the arena stage, where the audience completely surrounds the performance space. It's like being in the middle of a gladiator arena, with the action unfolding all around you.
It's an incredibly exhilarating experience for both the actors and the audience. The energy is electric, and there's this sense of immediacy and shared experience that you just don't get with other stage types.
But wouldn't that level of intimacy also present some unique challenges for the director? I imagine it's almost impossible to create traditional blocking patterns when the audience is on all sides.
You're absolutely right. The director has to approach blocking in a completely different way, using the circular space to create fluid movement and dynamic compositions.
So instead of fixed positions, the actors might be constantly in motion, weaving through the space and interacting with each other from different angles.
Precisely. And it's not just about the actor's movement. The director also has to consider how the lighting will play in a circular space and how sound will travel and how the set design will create a cohesive world that encompasses the entire arena.
It sounds like directing on an arena stage requires a mastery of all the theatrical elements, like conducting a symphony in the round.
It is. Now, before we move on from stage types, let's touch on those less conventional spaces we mentioned earlier, open stages and found spaces.
Yes, those seem like intriguing wild cards in the world of theater. What are some examples of how directors have used those spaces creatively to enhance a performance?
Well, open stages offer a blank canvas for experimentation. So imagine staging a play about the vastness of the universe on an open stage, using minimal set design, and relying on lighting and projections to create a sense of cosmic scale.
That's a striking image. It's like the stage itself becomes a metaphor for the boundless expanse of space.
Exactly. And found spaces offer even more unique possibilities. So imagine staging a play about homelessness in an abandoned warehouse, using the space's raw industrial aesthetic to reflect the characters' harsh realities.
That's a powerful example of how a found space can become an integral part of the storytelling. It's about embracing the unexpected and transforming the ordinary into something extraordinary.
It is, and it speaks to the adaptability and resourcefulness of directors who are willing to push the boundaries of traditional theater. Now, are you ready to shift gears and delve into the world of film directing?
Absolutely. Bring on the cameras from the close-ups. I'm eager to explore how those film techniques we discussed earlier translate into a cohesive visual narrative.
Then let's roll. Film directing is a fascinating blend of technical prowess and artistic vision. It's about using the camera as an extension of the storytelling, guiding the viewer's eye and shaping their emotional experience.
We talked earlier about POV shots, where we see the world through a character's eyes. I'm curious to see how directors use that technique effectively to enhance a story. Can you give us an example from a well-known film, perhaps a South African one?
Absolutely. Let's take a look at a scene from Tsotsi, a powerful South African film that won an Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film.
Ooh, so see, I loved that film. It was so raw and emotionally gripping.
It was, and the director, Gavin Hood, masterfully uses POV shots to draw us into Sotsi's world and make us experience his journey from hardened criminal to conflicted young man. There's a particularly striking scene early in the film where Sotsi and his gang are planning a robbery on a train.
I remember that scene. It was so tense and suspenseful.
It was, and Hood uses POV shots to put us right in Sotsi's shoes. We see the world through his eyes as he surveys the train, sizing up the passengers and calculating his moves.
So instead of just watching the scene unfold objectively, we're experiencing it subjectively through Sotsi's perspective.
Yeah.
Like we're inside his head, feeling his anxieties and his adrenaline.
Precisely, and that use of POV shots makes us complicit in his actions, forcing us to confront the complexities of his character and the choices he makes.
It's a brilliant example of how a simple technique can completely transform the audience's experience. Now, what about close-up shots? We discussed how they can highlight subtle emotions and details. How does a director decide when to use a close-up, and what impact can it have on the viewer?
Close-ups are all about intimacy and revelation. They bring us closer to the characters, allowing us to see the nuances of their expressions and the subtle shifts in their emotions.
Like a magnifying glass on the soul, isn't it?
It is, and a skilled director knows how to use close-ups sparingly but effectively to create maximum impact. So think of a scene where a character is receiving devastating news.
Instead of showing the character's full body and their surroundings, the director might zoom in on their face, capturing the flicker of pain in their eyes or the trembling of their lips.
Exactly. That close-up amplifies the character's emotional state, making the audience feel their pain more acutely. It's a visceral experience that can be incredibly powerful.
It's a reminder that sometimes less is more. By stripping away the distractions and focusing on the essential, the director can create a more profound impact on the viewer.
Precisely. Now, speaking of stripping away distractions, let's talk about a film technique that does just that. Voiceover narration.
Voiceover. It's like a disembodied voice guiding us through the story, providing context or revealing inner thoughts that we wouldn't otherwise have access to.
Exactly. Voiceover can be a powerful tool for setting the scene, establishing a character's backstory, or even creating a sense of irony or foreshadowing.
It's almost like having a narrator whispering secrets in your ear, giving you a glimpse behind the curtain of the story.
It is, and a skilled director knows how to use voiceover judiciously, adding depth and nuance to the narrative without overwhelming the visuals.
I can see how too much voiceover could become distracting, almost like having someone explain the joke before you've had a chance to hear it.
Exactly. It's all about finding the right balance. Now, before we move on from film techniques, I want to touch on special effects, or FX. It's a broad category that encompasses everything from subtle enhancements to mind-blowing spectacle.
Special effects, the magic of cinema. It's amazing to think about how far technology has come in terms of creating visual wonders on screen.
It is, and special effects can serve a variety of purposes in a film. They can create realistic environments, bring fantastical creatures to life, or enhance the action and drama of a scene.
Thinking back to those common film terms we discussed earlier, special effects would fall into the umbrella of FX.
Exactly. It's any element that's added in post-production to enhance the visual or auditory experience, and a skilled director knows how to use special effects strategically to serve the story rather than just throwing in flashy visuals for the sake of it.
It's like seasoning a dish. The right amount of spice can enhance the flavors, but too much can overpower the main ingredients.
That's a great analogy. Now, speaking of finding the right balance, let's talk about a directing concept that bridges the gap between stage and screen, the use of symbolism.
Symbolism, it's about using objects, images, or actions to represent abstract ideas or deeper meanings, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how that translates from stage to screen.
Symbolism is a powerful tool for both mediums. So on stage, it might involve using a specific prop, like a bird cage, to represent a character's sense of confinement. In film, it might involve using a recurring motif, like a close-up on a character's hands, to symbolize their guilt or anxiety.
It's fascinating how those seemingly small details can take on a whole new layer of meaning when viewed through the lens of symbolism.
Exactly. And a skilled director knows how to layer those symbols subtly throughout a production, creating a rich tapestry of meaning that unfolds gradually for the audience.
It's like planting seeds that blossom into something bigger and more profound as the story progresses.
It is. Now, before we move on, I want to touch on one more directing concept that's relevant to both stage and screen, the use of subtext.
Subtext, it's what's not being said, the underlying meaning behind the words, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how directors work with actors to bring that subtext to life.
Subtext is all about the unspoken, the hidden tensions and emotions that simmer beneath the surface of the dialogue.
It's like an iceberg, with the majority of its mass hidden beneath the waterline.
Exactly. And a skilled director works with the actors to explore that hidden depth using subtle gestures, facial expressions, and vocal inflections to convey those unspoken truths.
So it's not just about delivering the lines, it's about understanding the character's inner world and conveying those emotions through their physicality and their voice.
Precisely. It's about reading between the lines and finding the emotional truth of the scene.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive into the world of directing. I feel like I'm starting to see the world through a director's eyes, noticing the subtle details and hidden meanings that I might have missed before.
It's been a pleasure to explore these concepts with you. And remember, the next time you watch a play or a film, pay attention to those choices the director has made. From the framing of a shot to the positioning of an actor on stage, you might be surprised at how much depth and artistry you discover.
That's a new challenge, and I encourage everyone listening to do the same. Become an active observer, a detective of the director's craft. Now let's take a short break. When we return, we'll wrap up our exploration of directing with some final insights and a thought-provoking question to leave you pondering. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the deep dive. As we wrap up our exploration of directing, I'm really struck by the sheer scope of a director's influence. It's not just about, bringing a story to life. It's about shaping the entire experience for the audience.
Yeah, it's true. The director acts as a guide, leading the audience through this carefully constructed emotional landscape.
And we've seen how they use so many different tools to achieve that, from blocking and stage types to camera angles and special effects.
Right, and each decision contributes to the overall impact of the performance, even choices that might seem insignificant at first glance.
Like we discussed earlier with French scenes, the way a character enters or exits the stage can subtly shift the energy of a scene.
Precisely. Those seemingly small moments can reveal hidden depths about a character or foreshadow events to come.
It makes you realize that a director is always thinking several steps ahead, anticipating how each choice will resonate with the audience.
Yeah, it's like playing this multidimensional game of chess, where every move has a ripple effect throughout the entire performance.
And speaking of ripple effects, something that really resonated with me from this excerpt is the power of symbolism in directing.
Ah, yes, symbolism adds layers of meaning, inviting the audience to engage with the story on a deeper level.
I'm thinking back to our discussion about Athol Fugard's plays, many of which are so rich in symbolism. Like, for example, in Master Harold and the Boys, the kite becomes this powerful symbol of hope and freedom, contrasting sharply with the oppressive reality of apartheid South Africa.
That's a great example, and Fugard uses symbolism masterfully throughout his work, often drawing on objects and images from South African culture and history to create this rich tapestry of meaning.
It's like he's weaving a secret language into the fabric of the play, inviting the audience to decode those symbols and uncover the deeper layers of the story.
Exactly, and that decoding process is what makes theater so engaging. It's not a passive experience, it's an active dialogue between the performance and the audience.
And that dialogue is further enriched by the use of subtext, those unspoken emotions and motivations that simmer beneath the surface of the dialogue.
Ah, subtext. It's the lifeblood of great drama, adding complexity and nuance to characters and their relationships.
I remember you mentioned a scene from Siltzy where the director used POV shots to put us right inside the main character's head. Could you elaborate on how subtext might play into that scene?
Certainly. So while outwardly Sutsi is planning the robbery, his internal world is much more conflicted. He's haunted by his past. And there's this growing sense of unease about the life he's leading.
So even though he's outwardly focused on the robbery, his body language and facial expressions might betray a sense of guilt or anxiety.
Exactly. And a skilled director works with the actor to convey those layers of subtext through subtle gestures, hesitant movements, or fleeting expressions of doubt.
It's like there's this silent conversation happening beneath the surface, adding a whole new dimension to the scene.
Precisely. And that's what makes a performance truly captivating, when the audience senses that there's more to the story than meets the eye.
This deep dive has made me realize just how multifaceted directing is. It's a blend of artistry and technical skill and a deep understanding of human nature.
Yeah, and it's a constant process of exploration and experimentation, pushing the boundaries of storytelling and finding new ways to connect with the audience.
Now, as we wrap up our exploration, I have one final question for you and for our listeners. What if we approached our own lives with a bit more of that director's mindset?
That's an intriguing thought. How do you envision that playing out?
Well, we've talked about how a director carefully crafts every element of a performance, from the lighting to the blocking to the pacing of the dialogue. What if we brought that same level of intentionality to our own lives?
I see what you mean. Instead of just reacting to events as they happen, we could be more deliberate in shaping our experiences, making choices that align with our values and aspirations.
Exactly. We could be more mindful of our own blocking, the way we move through the world and interact with others. We could even use French scenes to break down our goals into manageable steps, focusing on one entrance or exit at a time.
And perhaps we could all benefit from embracing a bit more symbolism in our lives, surrounding ourselves with objects and images that inspire us, creating rituals that connect us to our values.
That's a beautiful thought. It's about recognizing that we have the power to direct our own narratives, to create meaningful experiences for ourselves and those around us.
It's a reminder that life itself is a stage, and we are all, in a sense, directors of our own destiny.
That's a powerful note to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of directing.
It's been a pleasure sharing these insights with you.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep creating, and keep diving deep.